back.
Oh, do you want
Yeah.
me to sit back here?
Yeah, I think like. Can you hear well with the microphone? No. It's just in the spirit of Tsuzamen, we're broadcasting it to our like friends and family at home. I think it worked. יש אנשים שהצטרפו פה. Hello. תודה. Yes, I'll tell you what. I'll need your help. Yes, I'll tell you what. Oi? I'll need your help. No, so we're doing it live. So for friends and family. So when I do like I present it, and then I'll do like without further ado, like after the slides. So we can just like when I say after, with like without further ado, you can just slide it away, and then yeah, then everyone can see it. Yeah, but like, the guests at least should be here. Is there a way to rotate it a little? Can you see the frame? Like where should I see it? Around, yes. Hello. Ah, yes.
Okay, so we have one power tour missing, but I think that never stopped Brett still from speaking first part. So I think we're gonna be fine. So I want to welcome everybody to our morning session.
Hello. Maybe just one second.
Take your
Yeah.
time. I need to introduce all these wonderful people. So there were some changes in the lineup. So first, Julia Campolini, she runs Madame Architecture. If you're not following, you should start following it. It's a wonderful platform. Pedro Ferracini, an alum from SIAC and currently the Dean of the National School of Architecture, the National University of Rosario, my alma mater. Which has come down a long time.
It's sit down.
But we are very proud that one of our alums is in that leadership position. Marta Lingao, who is one of our undergrad chair. Ginger Nolan, who teaches theory and USC. Jamie Jordan, who recently at Kenyan Partners, now configuring the future. Yes. A practicing architect in Los Angeles. So pleasure to have you with us. Jerry Newman, one of our board members. Fred, Jerry, okay. Also lawyer here in Los Angeles. And last but not least, just arrived Redfield in the USC. We also have William Virgil, faculty and coordinator of Making a Meaning, and advisor of some of the students that we see this morning, and Elena Manfredini, the graduate programs chair here at the school, and also an advisor of some of the projects that we see this morning. Without further ado, Roy.
Without.
Take it
Hi,
away.
hello. We're also streaming it for friends and families around the world in the spirit of the project. So if you want to talk like to this microphone. Yeah, so I'll just, this is like for the, only the beginning. So good morning, Shabbat Shalom everyone. My name is Roy Tamir and welcome to my project, Tsuzamen, or How I Made a Strength Thesis project that makes you happy and brings people together. So Tsuzamen is a word in Yiddish which means together, in a way of unity, of collaboration, of being with others. Like it's not only like being together, it's like Tsuzamen, like in the spirit of the powerful of the Yiddish. It's like the togetherness and collective effort. This is like the idea of the project. So the project goal was to create an exciting experience for us here and to have like a high-spirited discussion, which is very important in the spirit, like with everything that is happening and in architecture in general. Personal goals that I had for myself for this semester, for this project, were to learn how to code, to practice woodcraft, and to learn to work with electricity and motors. So if this is the goal of the project, I want to say a few words about my operating system, my ADHD. Like this is the force that actually drives me. And actually it makes me a very, very, very messy person. So while I'm working like with this messiness in my head and in the physical world, my dear wife is very neat and organized, and she needs order to function. So there is this tension between like her needs of like cleanness of the space and me that I thrive in chaos. So I created this element, and where is the guy? Without further ado, this is the portion of the event. This is the project itself. we will soon be
later?
holding the
Okay.
things because it's like the sensory is part of the. But as you can see, it's the idea of togetherness. It's like the organization around this table that is actually like really, Anand said it very beautifully in the beginning of the year speech. It's about reclaiming our humanity in a world that everything is digital and all the time we are in screens. Like I wanted to do something that has like grounded in reality. So for this is the table. This is 1 to 6. This is 1 to 25. This is 100 to 1 to 120. And I wanted to create something that like you cannot simulate, you cannot animate, you cannot emulate, you cannot like anticipate the reaction around the table. Like it was only a matter of fabricating and appreciating this situation. So if you want to dive, now comes the more fun part, the interactive part. So in order to understand the mechanism, okay, this is a small version of the mechanism of the table. You want to pass it around and try it. And Marceline, behind you is, yeah, the reminiscence of the process. Yeah, bring it. It's like throughout the semester, it was like trying to understand like what can be done with wood to bring it to its limits and doing something that is like fun and interactive. So this is the project, this is the outcome. I'm very proud that I managed to do something. It's like a zero waste project because everything that you see here, like the table is dismantleable, and after that I'll take it with me to work like at home, and it's not a lot of like residue, and this is it. Thank you for sharing this experience, Tsuzamen, together.
You know, I don't know how much this does for world peace, but it's definitely a better way to have a review.
Exactly.
Feeling that right now. So can you like? I'm thinking of. Oh, what?
Just
you
hold
can
it
hear
in.
me, right? Yeah, okay.
It's just for the.
Oh, sure.
For the
What was I going to say? Oh, I was thinking about because if you're trying, this is political and ludic at the same, like pleasurable at the same time, right? Is that correct, or is that just trying to get to
I try to avoid as much of like the political. It's more like a tool of like reflecting maybe of our role as architect, like how we perceive maybe the idea of discussion, or maybe like also like working in an office many years. I always wanted also like to have this reveal of like a model in the beginning, in the middle, and then everyone like can be able to discuss it instead of having like a rectangular. The important people sit here, and the interns sit like in the back. They have the luxury of seeing it, but this way, like everyone has the same ground.
Okay. I mean, I just maybe I should start with a more basic question because I have comments, but they might be off kilter depending on what your goals are. Like, could you just explain like some of the design moves? Because it seems like some of it is to bring like a certain levity, right? Like a kind of lightness to things that would otherwise have a kind of gravity. Is that,
for instance, what did you notice that is like
the kitty cats?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
okay, no. So the cats, it's like you know, like throughout the process of the fabrication, I found like the most perfect geometric pattern that can work on the CNC. But then I thought like, but it can also work with like any shape that have these rules of like this, and it works. It's like without any tension, like this can come apart. So it's like, why not?
And what's supposed to happen in here? Like, what do you like? What are some like? Maybe that's it. Give us some like possible scenarios of things that might happen. Like,
Three scenarios.
Yeah. Okay.
One, I'm working. I have all of my stuff all over the place, electricity and everything. Comes night, I put it here. We bring it down. Then we can have guests and host. Two, we are architects, we have a discussion, we want to show our project to the client, but we don't want to show it straight away. We want to have a grand reveal. So we do that. 3, your wife comes home, she sees the table, you open it, and a bouquet of flower comes from the middle instead of like having it come from the kitchen and everything. It's like it can be a powerful experience for many levels.
And Korean barbecue, obviously.
Korean, everything.
But I think it's a great, I mean, I love the idea of like making a project about how architects come together, because it is, I think, such a crucial part of one's education, and it does actually structure so much of like how we sort of think about, like as students, right? I mean, how we sort of think about the feedback that we get. So I don't know. I'll let other people, I've been talking, so I'll let other people talk.
A couple questions.
Can you get the microphone?
Oh, yes.
We'll just pass it around, like things that you pass it around.
So first, why wood is your medium? What brought you to pick wood as the way you wanted to express togetherness?
It's something that I've always been drawn. Oh, that's a great question. I'll tell you what, I can be very honest about it. I really like wood, and the workshop and the things that you can do in the workshop in SciArc is really like impressive. Like I really had an approach to CNC and printing and laser cutting in a way that I didn't have before. So I had a lot of space to experiment. So I really could do in relatively short amount of time to do something that actually works with. Actually, everything is made of not leftovers, but parts of CNC and bike chains and the 3D printer platform. It's like everything, I don't want to say on a budget, but everything is very friendly to the user.
And then the aperture, almost like a camera. Why the aperture, and what does that have to do with the meaning of what you're trying to do?
Honestly, I tested many apertures, and this one is the most elegant because it doesn't take more space. It's not that it like closes and then it opens. It's like the way that they manage to form around themselves. Very elegant, very like an eye.
Right, and a camera. And then finally, you went through a number sequence. Tell us about that number sequence that you went through. You started with, I think, the 9, and then you ended up with 120 at that table.
Okay, this is also, I can be very honest. The question was exactly like, what do you do inside? We're architects, so we do things, and then we make models to show the smaller version of the thing. I managed to find like these figures and those chairs that fit perfectly like scale-wise. And then I said, okay, so if we are here, and then we look at the table, so what do they look about? So they look at the smaller version of this, and then they look at like a smaller version. So like it wrote itself in a way.
Roy, I think when you're talking about that sort of scalar relationship with models, the physical artifacts that we make as architects, I think what you're modeling here is the critique itself, like it's sort of the institution on display. I mean, and for those of you who have been up in our library, we have a big round table with kind of pieces that almost puzzle into the center of the table. And so to me, this seems like a reflection on that. And then the nesting of the critical engagement, like the review, the thesis is almost for us to examine how it is that we engage in critique in architecture today. And it seems like, I think in your introduction as well, when you spoke about the relationship between, you know, those that maybe have a certain degree of power versus those that are working on the margins, and sort of flipping that and allowing those relationships to be kind of transformed pretty radically. I think that's really the power of the project. I mean, I'm reading that very clearly now. I think a huge step. I remember seeing an earlier iteration of this when you had other objects nested inside, and then the discussion was about like, what do we find in there? What do we discover? And so I think this step to actually kind of like almost reveal to us our own roles in this moment of a critical discussion about a thesis is pretty remarkable. So thank you for that.
I think there's something kind of, I think part of the like feeling of the kind of happiness, relaxedness of of this is somewhat, there's something nostalgic about us all sitting on this flat hierarchy round table, and there only being a single focus for problem, which is in the middle here, and that there's an idea that maybe it's sort of an onion problem, that there's layers and layers and layers, but you're really like, this is some classical approach of, we want to find the nucleus, we want to find what's inside the nucleus, we want to find what's inside that, we want to find, rather than there being a plural to the issue. And I think that's sort of the amazing part of this, that it's just honing straight in and asking us all to focus in on whatever the singular is. And the idea that it's inside itself, inside itself, inside itself, is kind of a beautiful kind of position to take for this. And then the question would be then, what's the one where we can't turn around and there are like 25 problems and you're looking for the connection? And is that, back to a classroom or something, opposed to the kind of antithesis? It's sort of a lovely idea.
It's a long tradition of art design. I would imagine the function, what you see. There's a long tradition of writing, body sharing, and it's a work where you start. But then when you as Russian girl, discover something. After that, there was a moment where I was playing model is a presentation of this in which she feels, and then somehow adds a track maybe the translation. I'm not sure what is with the aperture discovers student that the biggest question. When the power can think those skills, these still see something. Or maybe not. And I think that over.
Can I answer that? I have my own because I'm.
Of course.
No, I have my. I've discovered, and I had like kind of a cautionary tale in this manner of sense. It took me back. I did an exchange semester in Weimar in Germany, and we made a pavilion. We made the Mobius strip, and we made 1 to 10. It worked perfectly. 1 to 5, it worked perfectly. 1 to 3 even worked perfectly. Then when we fabricated 1 to 1, we made like a giant laser cut pieces of like 5 meters, which is how much in feet? Like many feet, like 15 feet of a laser cut piece. The problem is that instead of being 16 millimeters, it was 18 millimeters. And the Mobius strip didn't close. So sometimes, like the idea of model has its limitation. In this project, as you can see, like the models ingenuically cannot show or cannot inhabit the actual behavior of the product itself. So there was like I decided in this case to actually first fabricate it and then make the models. Because if I make this model and it doesn't close till the end, I know that I will just be heartbroken and I would give up like the entire process. So I'm glad that I did it, and it reminded me how important it is sometimes like to understand that the model is a representation of, and if you want to do something with it in itself, there can be a lot of differences.
Your example there, really, it's an interesting form of learning that lets us rethink the role of these models and how they're operating. The last point you make, which is that you want to see the model operating primarily as a representation of something else, you could say is one lineage of 20th century modeling that this is building upon. But the other one would be this idea of a pavilion, and that the model isn't a representation of anything, it's a prototype to learn something to then move to a next iteration. Sort of iterative model of learning that prototyping is built on. The question, to build on that last point made about the 3 scales of models, were there any crises in these three scales of models that didn't work? Or to ask Elena's question slightly differently, what are we learning that's pushing the project forward in each step? And you made a deliberate decision to model at three distinct scales, one particular object, which is the table and its mechanism. But in a way, you're also modeling the central feature of an architecture school, which is simply a discussion of a project. Right? That's what I think is so interesting about the thesis, that you want to just build a thesis of this central premise that we're all going to learn by talking about a project. So in your work on the project, where was the crisis moment like this Weimar pavilion you're talking about, in which I had to do something different? Or in fact, was it scripted from day one to this presentation, and it was just a matter of execution, which seems to be then a lack of learning that a thesis project should be putting on the table to carry you forward.
It was the complete opposite, exactly what you're relating to. It was going into the unknown. And in this case, like the ADHD like was a factor. It was many times was pushing forward. It's like it didn't work. Then you want to give up and you push yourself to try again because the mechanism didn't work. It didn't work, and this didn't go up, and this didn't close, and then and it managed to work, but one time and then it didn't. There were so many times I said like, it's okay, so it won't work, and people will be generous like to say, okay, if we could have worked, but I really wanted to create this moment, the movement, like it was important, the movement and the elegance of it, and also to be quiet because the motors were loud, but then you make another motor, it doesn't move, and then you make it go up and it stays up forever, that it doesn't go down, but like, you know, and trying like again and again to get like
the question I would have is, how can you capture all of that and include it in the project such that it can become a discussion about not just what you produced at the end, which we can all contribute to, but also to the ways in which you tried to solve those problems. Because that's ultimately what it seems like you're trying to take command of, so that next year when you do version 2 or 12 or 15, the learning from these past iterations can be carried forward. And again, for me, the modeling of the discussion of the project seems to be what you're really putting on the table literally in a really dramatic way. The question is, how am I actually designing this conversation today such that it can produce knowledge and information that can carry my work forward? And that's probably, I would say, the hardest thing to see in it right now. What are the techniques we could use that would diagram, script, record, capture the discussion?
True.
Such that you as a designer can then take that knowledge out the building tomorrow when we all go off and look at other projects and do your work further. And for that, it seems to be that the things that would be interesting to model would be those techniques that literally choreograph, the history of choreography, the notational systems that are used to control discussions and conversations of bodies or individuals. Those kinds of techniques, I think, would be a really great thing to add alongside the stuff that you're doing in the workshop.
I agree
Williams
completely.
and Forsyth's notational systems for conversation as a form of performance art, or Eisenstein's art of the montage, which is how you make a cut from one moment of discussion to another. Like, oh, those are your tools now too, it seems. It would be great to have models for those alongside the beautiful sort of table.
Agree.
and he modeled it very literally. Or suggest a little bit more. We are. How can you take it a step further? All sitting on circular instead of plastic chairs. But we move around the table. That iteration, the other layer, right? You could like give us feedback. So we demonstrate all the different. But like very much.
Thank you.
I would agree with that, Roy. I think that for me, you presented a project, and I want to know about the link. So, like many culture, they have something that is called the sabla, and it started just like at this tent where people will come together, and you have leaders, you have community, and they're just kind of like going at it about issues that they have and how do they solve things. And for me, I think that you sit us here and then you show us in a different scale. I am understanding this as a way of critiquing what we do here. I think that for me, I'm trying to find the critique in the project just because I don't know, not because I'm interested in arguing, but it's more because for me, I think there's always something more to say. You mentioned this aspect of being very messy, and I don't know, like I see the cables here, they're really nicely tied. So how is this aspect of messiness being expressed in a project that is so clean? You designed the cats, you like put it together in one way. This thing needed to be perfect in the way that it opened. It needed to work here. So there's a lot of things that I would wish that somehow you would try to unpack instead of just presenting the project as what the project is. And that's I mean that's your honesty on the table. That's okay. But I think that there's a lot of aspects that your project touches on. When I read as us sitting at a circular table, then you showing us, and then you showing us at a smaller scale. Are you trying to say that like the more we sit together and we argue, the less and less we disagree, and this is why the scale starts changing.
Interesting.
I don't know. I think that there's many ways to take the project, just so that I don't know, the conversation about this friction between what we do as architects and the essence of like what the problem might be could be expressed in a better way.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with all the comments. I just want to say that for me, getting back to LA after 5 years, it's kind of theatrical at some point, and I like that because you design not the table, which you design it, but at least for me, it's an entire performance around it. So it's more like a theater, right? You just put the actors there, or the scenography there, and just go up and down, and just change the atmosphere right away. But it is also it's positive that get me thinking about this project that we saw yesterday about this university a proposal of university that went to virtual, but in fact the things that it gathers to create that huge dispositive was more real than he created. I think that dispositive will go better with the theories of that, right? Because that project was discussing about how to in a community you can build knowledge around like a persistence way of educating ourselves against country governor or whatever. Then he created a dispositive that didn't work that way. I think this dispositive will work better in that project. Or you can just offer to him, this is the dispositive that you want to have. Because once you design the performance, you have the conversation in the way you want to have it. And then you can grab the knowledge that is on the table, just put it in your pocket or on your heart, just go on. And so it's super accomplished. And I really like the idea that you create the real product. Everybody desires this go in different ways, like super virtual, super something in between. This is like real made is here. You can take it away with you and just continue this construction with yourself. So congratulations on that. Also, sorry. In fact, the microphone was kind of going around just by itself.
I guess I've been thinking this whole time, like, what's the difference between like a war room table, which looks exactly like this, except for the kitty cats, right? That's the difference. And a not war room, a Tsuzamen table, right? And I don't know how you. I mean, were you sort of thinking about that? Because on the one hand, I've been thinking like, well, is there more you can do to ensure that this isn't just a war room table? And on the other hand, it's like anything you do is going to be like trying to social engineer something that can't really be social engineered. Again, not through, I would think, not through architecture exactly. Maybe the kitties are all you need, but like to kind of diffuse some certain kind of conversation. But I wouldn't. I'd like to hear a little more from you. Like, what is the difference between a war table and a dominant table? Because even this, like, it's scenography and its effect, but there's something in there too that we can. There's almost like it has the kind of a Star Wars quality of like, this is the thing we all look at, and it's like it determines. I don't know.
That's true. No, in this relation, I think many times as architects we understand that many times we can see like the opposite of something in the thing itself. You want to do something that's like completely different if it was like super colorful. So maybe like the difference between war and peace, it's like it's not so far away. It can be like a war room, it can be like Doctor Strangelove, that everyone, all the generals sit around and decide how to eliminate problems, but we can also, it's based on this foundation to show that you can use the same foundation in a different approach. You can come to, you need to come together. Even if you decide like bad decision, if you decide good decisions, you need to come together. Maybe the way, like you said, the way that you sit around, the way that you very, not sophisticated, but maybe very culturally pass around, like in William Golding's not Beelzebub, how is it called? Lord of the Flies, that they started like as a very cultural society with the with the shell, and then like it broke apart. Like we can make our togetherness, and we can decide to do good things for other people. This is the idea, Tsuzamen, to come together and to start like. It's so important.
But
It's
again,
so important.
you're touching on scenography. Ginger's point is so great. Like this is a design. It is a design set of design decisions, like any other project. Like any other thesis project, you're trying desperately to model the final result at the very beginning. I'm just not going to get overwhelmed by people jumping out of left field on this sort of thing. But in these Kubrick example, the Strangelove example that's so amazing is still for me that Ronald Reagan, when he's elected, asked to go see that Situation Room, thinking it was the Situation Room in America. Like this famous scenographic setting that Ken Adam designs, an architect, movie designer, creates a scenography for an act to play out that becomes so real that it literally overwhelms the idea of realism entirely. And I think what you need to make claim for is why this particular table, why circular, why 7 people instead of the 10 that are here is a good enough representation, and to really defend the specificity of it. Because you're making a set of assertions that are actually really quite dramatic in terms of their expectation that we have that this is close enough. Mm-hmm. We live in a world suddenly of large language models in which literally this 20-minute conversation could have been modeled in advance. You could have loaded into that large language model all of our past comments at other juries, and you could have played out a version of this conversation. That's a different kind of model than one that says that if I pick 7 mannequins and let them stand for 10 people that have been invited in for critics, that's enough of a model. And it might be, actually,
Interesting.
and part of the argument you're making, that it captures the central act enough that I just need to make it physical rather than realistic in the sort of informational model of LLMs today. But I think those are really specific points that you're touching on that are super powerful as a kind of critique of what we call a thesis project. We live in an era in which many schools have gotten rid of the idea of a thesis project precisely because they become an attempt to model performance and not a form of project that's moving the world forward in some way. But I think that's what's so powerful in the kind of very specific decisions you made. Like it's a really loaded project, I would say. I mean, it's one to defend in its most specific features and not just sort of general performance.
I have to say, I think very much the comment that was that it does not actually have a real science comment, but we're probably I don't know if it has access to understanding. Yeah, I think that's each other. Or I don't know. I'm not sure. But I out that I have. I want
Interesting.
So we have to move on.
Can I just
Yes.
just like a few words of like summarization, because it's like no, so it's like no, it's okay, just like but no, okay, exactly what we're doing. Like a very powerful phrase in Yiddish is "Lachen ist gesund."
This is nostalgia right here.
First of all, yes. So it's like the idea of like being like doing like to have some fun and to do something in good spirited. It's also something that is very important. It's like this in itself elevates like much of the discussion. And to touch on all of the points, this project of this table is something that you couldn't do anywhere else other than SciArc. It's like I was really inspired from the table to come to SciArc because I really understand like this powerful of the power of this situation. And I'm really happy that I managed to do it and to bring like people together. And it's like mischief managed.
I think you should offer us a work table for the childless cat ladies against JD Bank. It's a great group. Like,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
I think sometimes
Yeah, I understand. There was a lot of like
I've never seen that. How did you see that? Maybe it's more obvious. How did you see it?
I saw it in
I don't know.
No, it's amazing.
Some places are kind of.
Thank you very much, Brett.
You guys were like, what the hell is she talking about? I was like, and then I thought,
Yeah.
this is a fish.
What?
The wall wasn't earlier.
Yeah, it was like I want like that. Yeah, wow.
I would like to know more about those.
I know. It's like I wanted, but I didn't manage to. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Couple things. One, this is way better than that table in the library.
Mm.
Like you can't. We saw it for the first time yesterday. Like it was terrible. And moving it, they said they never really use it the way it's supposed to be used.
It's giant.
Also, I think my expectation was that there would be your mess coming up.
It is. You see, it was like there is a contrast between this. in previous presentations, I put some messiness inside, but then it raises more questions. People started like, but why do you have this electrical wire, blah, blah, blah. So this way it was like,
Well, or the flowers. Like, I think how would that have changed the discussion among these fancy pants people? What if it had been the bouquet of flowers?
you're right.
And also, how could this? You have to think culturally in the world we live in. How does this bring this to Israel and Gaza right now?
Exactly. No, it's exactly that, because I'm also like a part of the Fulbright, which is like exactly about this of like a, I don't want to say like peace. Now it became like very loaded word, but bringing people together, starting like the discussion. So it's part of like our reality.
And one last thing is, as a layperson, I'm like, oh, fantasizing what would this be like in my house, right? So is this something you would consider painting?
Yes, of course. Like I had like an idea to make it paint or different wood. There were many things I wanted to do, but eventually like time ran out, and there is also like many things that happened at home really affected my emotional ability to work throughout. So it was like I'm very happy that I managed to do this meaningful work, and
Yeah, and the person who said, oh, she liked the wood and the plastic.
it's okay because this, but I'll tell you what, this is also recycled. Like I took it from the garbage. Many people just throw away plastic. I know. I was so neat. Thank you very much. Okay.
It's really great.
שומעים, רועי עשה עבודה טובה. אני פה, כן.
בגלל שאנחנו בפריים? אז תודה רבה לכולם שאתם רואים את זה. אנחנו מתגעגעים ואוהבים. מקווים שזה היה טוב.
כן, ואם לא, אז אל תגידו לנו.
כן, אוהבים את כולם. אנחנו עכשיו שזה נגמר ושזה נהדר. Goodbye everyone.
אני חושבת שזה